In the summer of 1945, American scientists built a metal sphere the size of a grapefruit, designed to erase a city.
The war ended 4 days before it could ship, so the sphere stayed home. And then it started killing the men who made it. It killed them twice, 9 months apart. Once with a dropped brick, once with a slipped screwdriver. Both times the air glowed blue. Los Alamos, New Mexico. The Manhattan Project has just ended the war with 2 bombs, and a 3rd core is already finished. The finished core is plutonium, heavy as a bowling ball yet small enough to cup in 2 hands. Its code name, Rufus. On August 13th comes the order. Prepare it for a 3rd Japanese city. 2 days later, Japan surrenders. Rufus never leaves New Mexico. Now the laboratory owns something unprecedented. A finished bomb core with no bomb to join. Too valuable to bury, too dangerous to ignore. So the physicists did what physicists do. They turned the leftover weapon into an experiment, and they used their bare hands. Here is the physics, in one breath. The sphere is subcritical. Its chain reaction constantly starts and constantly dies out. But surround it with the right material, and escaping neutrons bounce back in. Feed the reaction its own sparks, and it wakes. Push that too far and the core goes critical. Heat and a burst of invisible radiation strong enough to end a life in seconds. The scientists called this work tickling the dragon's tail. You creep toward criticality, measure, and step back before it bites. Enrico Fermi heard how they were doing it and gave a warning. Keep this up, and you will be dead within a year. The rules of the experiment were the experimenter's own steady hands. No machines, no distance, no second chances. Remember that. August 21st, 1945. 6 days after the surrender, a 24-year-old physicist works late, mostly alone. His name is Harry Daghlian. His experiment? Stack heavy tungsten carbide bricks around Rufus, one by one, and watch the readings climb. Each brick is a mirror for neutrons. Each layer wakes the core a little more. The counters click faster with every course. He reaches to place one final brick, and the detectors warn him, this one is too many. He moves to pull his hand back. The brick slips. It lands square on the core, and the room fills, for an instant, with a soft blue glow. That glow is air itself being torn by radiation. Every second it shines, the dose climbs. Daghlian does not run. He grabs the brick with his bare hand and pulls the stack apart, piece by piece, until the glow dies. The reaction lasted seconds. The dose was enormous. His right hand had been inches from a critical bomb core. Harry Daghlian walked himself to the hospital. He held on for 25 days. He was the first person the core killed. The guard in the room that night, Private Robert Hemmerly, received a small dose. Leukemia took him 33 years later.
I'm arthritis, Martha. The laboratory grieved, wrote reports, and kept going. The core was examined, found undamaged, and returned to service.
9 experiments, new confidence, and a date circles back around the 21st of the month.
May 21st, 1946. Louis Slotin, 35. Slotin has done this dozens of times. Today he is training his replacement, Alvin Graves, who stands close behind his shoulder. The apparatus, Rufus resting in a half shell of beryllium and a second half shell lowered over it like a closing clamshell. Fully closed, the shells would send the core critical instantly. So the rule says, keep them apart with machined spacers, always.
Slotin did not use the spacers. He held the gap open with the flat blade of an ordinary screwdriver. One hand on the shell, one hand on the screwdriver. 8 lives in the room, balanced on a 1/4 inch of steel.
At 3:20 in the afternoon, the blade slips. The top shell drops shut. The clamshell closes over the dragon. Blue light floods the room. A wave of heat crosses the men's skin. Every instrument in the building screams at once. Slotin moves in the same second. He tears the top shell off with his bare hand and drops it to the floor. The reaction lasted about half a second. It was already the largest radiation dose any American scientist had ever absorbed. Slotin's body had shielded the man behind him. His first act was calm. Everyone mark exactly where you were standing. Those chalk marks let doctors reconstruct every man's dose. It was Slotin's last experiment, and it saved.
He knew immediately. He said to a colleague on the way out, "I think I'm done for." He was not wrong. Louis Slotin died 9 days later, in the same small hospital room where Harry Daghlian had died the September before.
Alvin Graves, the man Slotin's body had shielded, survived the sickness and lived another 20 years.
2 accidents, both on the 21st of a month, both ending in the same room. The staff began calling the sphere something new, the demon core. Not because it was cursed, the physicists knew better, but because it kept collecting the overconfident.
The demon was scheduled for a third act, a public test detonation at Bikini Atoll in front of the world's cameras. The accident cancelled that too. The core was too hot, in every sense, to travel. It never got its explosion. In the summer of 1946, the demon core was quietly melted down and its plutonium recycled into the stockpile.
So the demon core no longer exists. And also, it never stopped existing. Its atoms are still out there in other weapons.
Now the part of the story that actually matters, what the 2 deaths changed and why no one has died this way since. After Slotin, hands-on criticality work was banned outright. No fingers, no screwdrivers, no bricks held over a live core, ever. The same experiments continued, but with machines doing the touching and the scientists a 1/4 of a mile away. Behind concrete, watching dials instead of blue light, researchers ran thousands more criticality tests. The dragon never bit again.
It is tempting to blame the screwdriver, but the screwdriver was a symptom. The disease was familiarity.
Slotin was not a fool. He was the best in the world at this, and that is precisely what made him dangerous. Daghlian knew the rules about working alone at night. Slotin heard Fermi's warning out loud. Skill kept overruling procedure. Every checklist in a modern lab, cockpit or operating room descends from lessons like this one, written in someone's name.
The physicists gave the sphere a demon's name, but the demon was never in the plutonium. It was in the shortcut, in the 8-inch screwdriver that felt safer than it was because it had worked every time before. 2 brilliant men, 3/4 of a year apart, taught the atomic age its first lesson in humility. The most dangerous thing in the room is never the machine. It is the certainty that you have done this before.
Next, the morning a whole Louisiana lake was pulled down a 14-inch hole with 11 barges and 65 acres of land.